Imagine, it's 10:42 a.m. on Sunday, April 18th, 1943. You are 4,000 feet above the Mediterranean, northwest of Zembra Island, off the coast of Tunisia. The sun is high, relentless. Your world consists of the muffled roar of your P-40 Warhawks Allison V1710 engine, the smell of hot oil and metal, the weight of your helmet and headset. You are part of the 57th Fighter Group, USAAF, just another routine patrol. Your eyes mechanically scan the horizon, searching for that tiny silver dot, that quick streak against the blue, an enemy fighter. The monotony is almost hypnotic, until something catches your attention. Not on the horizon, but down below. One of the pilots, perhaps from fatigue, perhaps from intuition, lowers his gaze, and what he sees makes no sense. The sea, which should be a uniform canvas of turquoise blue, is alive. It shimmers strangely, in an organized way. It's not the random glint of the sun on the waves. It's hundreds, thousands of synchronized reflections pulsing in unison with the movement of something colossal just below the surface, as if all the treasure of Atlantis had emerged at once. Your heart races, you squint, and then the image forms. Not fish, not treasure, wings, fuselages, airplanes, an immense, unimaginable fleet of aircraft flying so low that the propellers almost cut the crests of the waves. The formation stretches for kilometers, a river of metal flowing over the sea. The radio, previously static, emits a hiss. A restrained, almost disbelieving voice breaks the silence. "Doc, look down there. Tell me I'm not seeing it." Major Rankin's reply is a whisper etched in history. "I see it. My God, everyone sees it." In that second, the war changed. The question, burning in the minds of each of the 48 pilots present, is more than tactical, it's existential. Have we just witnessed a miracle, or the Luftwaffe's greatest tactical blunder? To decipher that murderous glint in the sea, we need to delve into the strategic desperation that created it. It is the spring of 1943. The desert fox, Erwin Rommel, once invincible, is cornered. His African epic, which reached the gates of Cairo, now boils down to a barren patch of land in northern Tunisia, the Tunis Pocket. Think of it as a funnel. On one side, coming from the east, the relentless Field Marshal Montgomery and his British Eighth Army, hardened veterans of El Alamein. On the other, coming from the west, the fresh forces of the US and England landed in Operation Torch. The Africa Corps and their Italian allies are literally with their backs to the Mediterranean Sea. But the real enemy, more lethal than any tank, is logistics. The ports of Tunis and Bizerte are under relentless bombardment. Legendary German efficiency is vanishing in the sand. Fuel? It's coming to an end. The Panzer IVs, the dreaded cats, are immobile, becoming static targets. Ammunition? Every shot is counted. Food and water? Rationed to the extreme. Morale, once unwavering, is crumbling along with the supply lines. It is in this vacuum of hope that Berlin orders the final solution, an airlift on a colossal scale. If we cannot supply them by sea or land, we will by air. It is a desperate gamble, a denial of reality. And this denial, flying low over the Mediterranean that April morning, was about to meet the implacable reality of the .50 caliber cannons. The instrument of this impossible escape was the Junkers Ju 52-3M, the Aunt Ju. In 1930, it was a revolutionary design. In 1943, it was a relic. Imagine a transport plane built like a flying barn. Corrugated metal fuselage, thick wings, fixed landing gear. It was robust, reliable, loved by its crews. But in the era of jet fighters already under development, the Ju-52 was a dinosaur. Its maximum speed, 290 kilometers per hour, empty. Loaded as they were that day, it barely reached 250 kilometers per hour, slower than many fighters of the First World War. And they were extremely loaded. Each Aunt Ju was a flying bomb. In its belly, 12 to 18 traumatized Afrika Korps soldiers, or barrels of 80-octane aviation fuel, or boxes of 7.92mm ammunition, or spare parts for the dreaded Flak 88 cannons. Many carried a deadly mixture of all of these. The side doors, open for ventilation in the desert heat, were now open wombs. The tactic was an act of faith, to fly on the nap of the earth, a mere 15 meters above the waves, invisible to the primitive radars of the time. They would cross the corridor of death, the 140 kilometers between Sicily and Cape Bone, in the widest possible formation, relying on a thin layer of Messerschmitt Bf-109 fighters and agile Mach-E Mach 202s flying high like guardians. It was a plan born of panic. And they didn't know that on the other side, their enemies not only heard their whispers, but read their diaries.
While the Ju-52 engines were warming up in Sicily at a top-secret complex in Bletchley Park, England, a team of cryptanalysts, mathematicians, and linguists was carrying out the greatest intelligence feat in history. The German Enigma machine, considered unbreakable, had been cracked. Project Ultra was not just a spying tool, it was a window into the mind of the German High Command. The Allies did not suspect the airlift. They knew its operating codes, its departure points, its arrival times, even the names of some pilots. With this treasure map of the enemy in hand, the Allied Mediterranean Air Command, under the command of the legendary General Jimmy Doolittle, the same one from the daring raid on Tokyo, devised Operation Flax, Flax in English, a banal name for a meticulous carnage. The plan was to weave a deadly web over the air corridor. The air superiority fighters, the sleek Spitfires Mark 9th and the twin P-38 Lightnings, would be the guardians, engaging and neutralizing the escort. The other part of the plan required a different kind of fighter and a different kind of pilot. Someone to do the dirty work from below against slow and overcrowded targets. The choice fell on the 57th Fighter Group and its underestimated P-40 Warhawks. The trap was set. The Germans walked towards it blindly, guided by their own desperation.
Let's talk then about the forgotten workhorses. The 57th Fighter Group didn't operate the glittering fighters of magazine covers. Their Curtiss P-40F Warhawks, with their iconic shark mouths painted on their noses, were considered second line in 1943. Compared to the Bf-109G, it was slower in climb and altitude. Against the FW-190, it was less maneuverable. Its main mission was the thankless task: ground attack, interdiction, dive bombing with small bombs. They were the workers of aerial warfare, soiling their fuselages with dirt and smoke while the aces dueled in the upper layers of the atmosphere. But the Warhawk had an iron soul. Built around a robust structure, it could be riddled with bullets and still return home. Its Allison engine, although not powerful at altitude, generated brutal torque in the dive. Armed with 6.50 caliber, 12.7mm Browning M2 machine guns, it was a flying chainsaw.
The .50 caliber bullets, especially the incendiary and armor-piercing ones, tore through aluminum structures with brutal ease. On April 18th, fate aligned the variables. An aircraft built for durability, armed to destroy materials, piloted by men accustomed to targeting ground targets. The target? Dozens of unarmored aircraft, flying at sea level, as slow as trucks. It was the perfect combination, the right instrument in the right place at the right time.
Let's return to the crucial point. 10:42 a.m., April 18th. Major Robert Doc Rankin, leading the 57th, gives the order to descend and investigate. The Warhawks tilt their noses, beginning a smooth spiral toward the mysterious shimmer. With each 100 feet they lose, the image becomes clearer, more absurd. First, indistinct shapes, then the unmistakable silhouettes of the Ju-52 trimotors. There weren't 10, there weren't 20, there were rows, an orderly and compact formation like a herd of metallic elephants marching on water. The pilots begin to count, losing track. Later estimates would speak of more than 60, perhaps reaching 100, including some of the largest and rarest May 323 Gigant, 6-engine transport aircraft. The radio explodes in a collective whisper of disbelief. Jesus Christ, it's a parade! Are they going to a picnic? Where's the escort, Doc? Where are the 109s? The answer is silence. The fighter escort, a mix of BF-109s and MAC-202s, was making a fundamental doctrinal error. They were flying too high, at about 8,000 feet, watching the sky above them, completely blind to the threat emerging from below. The Ju-52s, in their low-level flight, were not only invisible to radar, but also outside the direct line of sight of their own protectors. It was the fatal flaw. Rankin didn't need to give many orders. The opportunity was crystal clear. In code, he transmits, "All squadrons, attack. I repeat, attack at will. Stay in pairs. Good fighter work." The order was, in fact, simple: massacre. What followed was not an aerial combat. It was a mass execution. The squadrons of Warhawks, the Scorpions, Blackjacks, Fighting Cocks, spread out, each pilot choosing his target. The tactic was primitive and effective. Dive from a position slightly above and behind, take advantage of the accumulated speed, align the sights with the wide silhouette of the trimotor, and open fire in a short, devastating pass at less than 200 meters away. Lieutenant George Ratsey Whitway of the 65th Squadron would later describe it. "I got one that was flying on the edge of the formation. I approached from behind. I could see the faces in the windows. I pulled the trigger. My machine gun spat, and a line of holes appeared in the fuselage from the tail to the wing. Suddenly, a tongue of orange fire shot out of the right engine. The plane tilted to the right, heavy, and crashed into the sea without attempting to glide. There was no parachute. It was so fast it seemed unreal." Scene after scene repeated itself. A U-52 hit in the wing fuel tank exploded in a fireball that engulfed half the surrounding formation. Another, with its controls cut, entered a gentle spiral and plunged nose first. Some attempted desperate evasive maneuvers, turning inwards within their own formation, causing mid-air collisions that generated clouds of debris. The once calm Mediterranean was transformed into a hellish landscape dotted with impact craters, circles of burning oil, and dozens of white dots, survivors trying to swim in a sea covered in fuel. The slaughter was methodical, efficient, almost industrial. The P-40s made pass after pass, like wolves attacking a flock. Inside the Ju-52s, time stretched into a nightmare. For German Lieutenant Hans Schäfer, pilot of a Tanta U from 3/TG3, the transition was brutal. 1 second, we were in the monotonous roar of the engines, looking at the coastline growing on the horizon. The next second, the world collapsed. A sound of tearing metal, louder than the engines, glass shattering, screams. Daylight streamed in through giant holes in the roof. I saw the man sitting in front of me, the co-pilot, simply disappear, ripped from his seat by a burst of metal and fire. The resistance was heroic, pathetic, and futile. German soldiers, many of them veterans of Tobruk and Elamniki, tried to use their MG-34 portable machine guns and even Kar-98K rifles, firing through open windows and doors. Some Ju-52 crewmen mounted an MG-15 machine gun on the roof of the cabin, but aiming at a fighter jet passing at 500 kilometers per hour in a plane that was shaking violently was like trying to hit one bullet with another. The most experienced pilots, seeing the trap, attempted the only maneuver left to them, an emergency landing at sea. They cut the engines, tried to glide smoothly over the waves. Some succeeded, and the robust fuselage of the Ju-52 floated for a few precious minutes, allowing men to crawl to the wings. But many were so damaged that they broke in half on impact, sinking in seconds. Others landed on colleagues already in the water. The cold sea quickly caused hypothermia. The leaking fuel burned their skin and lungs. The choice was to drown, burn, or freeze. The low flight plan, their only protection, became their execution cell. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to dive. They were trapped on the surface, offered as a sacrifice to the new queen of the skies, intelligence combined with concentrated firepower.
While the sea turned into a hell, a few thousand feet above, a different symphony of death was playing out. The German and Italian escort pilots, initially confused by the chaos on the radio frequencies, finally understood. Their mission had failed catastrophically. They dove in tight groups. The bumps of the Bf-109G Gustav and the Agile Machi MC-202 Fulgore Lightning, cutting through the sky toward the carnage. But the second act of Operation Flax was already underway. Positioned at higher altitudes, squadrons of Spitfire Mk9 from the 92nd and 417th Squadrons of the RAF and P-38 Lightnings from the USAAF awaited this precise moment. Like guardian falcons, they dove to intercept. What followed was not a battle for air control, it was a blocking operation. The Spitfires, with their legendary maneuverability at medium altitudes, engaged the Bf-109s in classic vertical and horizontal duels, keeping them occupied. The P-38s, with their impressive dive speed and concentrated firepower, 4.5 caliber machine guns and a 20mm cannon in the nose, attacked in rapid passes, breaking up escort formations. The sky was divided into distinct layers. A zone of chaos and fire at sea level, dominated by the P-40s, and a fighter duel zone thousands of feet above, where British and Americans clashed with Germans and Italians. Lieutenant Wilhelm Krinius, a German ace with over 100 victories, furiously tried to reach the P-40s but was repeatedly blocked by a tenacious Spitfire. In his account, the frustration is palpable. They weren't there to shoot us down, just to delay us. Every minute we spent with them was another minute of massacre down there. It was the most horrible feeling of the war to see your comrades being shot down like ducks and not being able to do anything. Doolittle's trap was perfect.
One force engages the protectors, the other exterminates the target. The Axis was being defeated in 2 dimensions simultaneously.
At 10:57 a.m., approximately 15 minutes after the first attack, the spectacle of horror came to an end. Not because the Germans had fled, but because there were no more viable targets left. The P-40s, with their ammunition almost exhausted and their engines overheated, began to regroup. What they saw below defied description. The flight path of the U-52s was now marked by a trail of destruction almost 30 kilometers long. Columns of dense black smoke rose from dozens of points, connecting the sea to the sky like pillars of a macabre temple. Stains of burnt oil stained the water black and brown. Dozens of inflatable lifeboats, vests, and wreckage floated among the bodies. The silence on the radio was deafening. The hunters' initial euphoria had given way to a somber stupefaction. Captain Roy "Rocky" Jones of the 66th Squadron recalled, "We landed and nobody said a word. We got out of the planes and just stood there, looking at each other. Someone tried to make a joke, but his voice failed him. We had the feeling that we had done something disproportionate." The official count, after meticulous confirmation, including observations of wreckage on the coast and reports from the Tunisian resistance, was shocking. 24 U-52s and 3 escort fighters shot down confirmed in the air. A further 46 aircraft, mostly U-52s, but also some gigantic Me-323s destroyed at sea or on the coast during disastrous forced landings. A total of 73 Axis aircraft eliminated. The 57th Group lost only 6 P-40s, all due to low-intensity anti-aircraft fire from their own transports or accidents during the intense dive. The proportion was astronomical. It was the largest annihilation of transport aircraft in a single day in the entire war. Pilots who participated in the Battle of Britain, where the major fighting on the Eastern Front, said they had never seen anything like it. It was such an extraordinary event that the Allied High Command initially doubted the reports. The impact of the Easter Massacre, as it became known due to its proximity to the date, was not measured only in lost aircraft, but in shattered hopes. The Luftwaffe suffered an irreparable loss, approximately 20% of its total transport fleet in the Mediterranean, and something close to 50% of the region's experienced transport pilots. The airlift to Tunis, already precarious, was drained of its logistical resources. The consequences on the ground were swift and decisive. Without fuel for their tanks, without ammunition for their cannons, without food for their men, the resistance of the Afrika Korps rapidly collapsed. On May 6th, the Allies launched the final attack. On May 13th, 1943, just 25 days after the massacre, General von Arnim surrendered. Over 275,000 German and Italian prisoners, a number greater than those captured at Stalingrad, marched to detention camps. Each of these men was a veteran soldier, a skilled technician, a trained leader. They would not have been defending the Gustav Line at Monte Cassino. They would not have been in Normandy on D-Day. They would not have been on the Eastern Front to contain the Soviet offensive. The surrender in Tunisia freed up entire Allied divisions and a colossal fleet for the next step, the invasion of Sicily, Operation Husky, which in turn would lead to the fall of Mussolini.
The lesson of the Mediterranean on April 18, 1943, resonated far beyond the war. It redefined paradigms. First, the supremacy of intelligence, the Ultra, proved that deciphering the enemy's intent was more powerful than any tactical weapon. Victory was orchestrated in silent rooms at Bletchley Park before a single engine was even started. This lesson would shape the NSA, GCHQ, and the geopolitics of the 20th century. Second, the end of the pure fighter dogma. The P-40, ridiculed as outdated, proved that the value of a weapon is defined by its tactical context. It wasn't the best fighter, but it was the perfect tool for that specific job. Modern warfare would come to value specialized, multi-mission platforms. Third, the annihilation of logistics as a primary objective. Operation Flax demonstrated that attacking the supply chain was more devastating than engaging the army in the field. This became the cornerstone of modern air doctrine: win the war by attacking the enemy's ability to fight, not just its combatants. Fourth, the synthesis of air power. The battle was won by the perfect combination: intelligence, command, and superiority, along with specialized strike force. It was one of the first complete and coordinated demonstrations of modern air power as a strategic theater weapon. The 57th Fighter Group, the supporting forces, became one of the most decorated fighter groups in the USAAF. The humble Warhawk earned a place of eternal respect, and the world learned that in war, the enemy's moment of greatest vulnerability is often created by their own desperation.
So what remains of this April morning? More than statistics, what remains is a study of chance and preparation. The confluence of a German desperation that blinded them, a British secret that saw through them, and an American unit prepared to act when the opportunity, improbable, impossible, shone on the sea. The pilots of the 57th were not predestined for greatness. They were doing their duty on a routine mission. Greatness was imposed upon them by a reflection in the ocean. They chose to investigate. They chose to engage. They chose to exploit the enemy's catastrophic failure with relentless ferocity. Imagine the final scene, long after the last shot. The afternoon sun shining on a now calm sea, stained with oil. The Warhawks returning to base at El Gem, their pilots silent, witnesses to something that would forever change their lives and the course of a war. On land, mechanics see the bullet marks, the empty cannons, and understand. The news spreads. The impossible happened. The final question then is not technical or strategic. It's human. What if, at that exact moment, that pilot hadn't lowered his gaze? What if the sun had been obscured? What if the escort had been at the right altitude? The history of the Western world could have taken a slightly different turn. But he looked. The sun was shining, and the escort was too high. Some battles are won by generals on maps, others by soldiers in the field. This one was won by a pilot who, in a moment of pure intuition, saw a strange gleam in the sea and decided to check it out.